we go. All right, so now I've got the video running and adjust it a little bit. There we go. Okay, so this is the setup I have here with a microphone. It is and this sound piece, this piece of sound equipment, all of this I got from Amazon for fairly cheap. And I don't remember the brand of this, but this is a Toner, I think, Tonar microphone. And it comes with a clip and everything, really easy to put together. So if you guys are into it, check it out. Let's get back to the book. Chapter 4, The Wind Book. The Wind Book. In strategy, you must know the ways of other schools. So I have written about various other traditions of strategies in this The Wind Book. Without knowledge of the ways of other schools, it is difficult to understand the essence of my Ichi school. Looking at other schools, we find that some that specialize in techniques of strength using extra long swords. Some schools study the way of the short sword, known as kodachi. Some schools teach dexterity in large numbers of sword techniques, teaching attitudes of the sword as the surface and the way as the interior. That none of these are the true way I show clearly in the interior of this book, all the vices and virtues and rights and wrongs. My Ichi school is different. Other schools make accomplishments their means of livelihood, growing flowers and decoratively coloring articles in order to sell them. This is definitely not the way of strategy. Some of the world's strategists are concerned with only with sword fencing and limit their training to flourishing the longsword and carriage of the body. But is dexterity alone sufficient to win? This is not the essence of the way. I have recorded the unsatisfactory point of other schools one by one in this book. You must study these matters deeply to appreciate the benefit of my Nitoichi school. So he's promoting himself here. It's interesting. I would love to find someone who, if there is anyone who has trained, who, we have the generations in the Kung Fu school, so who has trained and as part of the generations of the Ichi school, as he calls it. I looked for some around here in Maryland and DC, but couldn't find any. But if there's somebody out there that does, that'd be really cool to train under them, especially if they really preserved his methods. Other schools using extra long swords. Some other schools have a liking for extra long swords. From the point of view of my strategy, these must be seen as weak schools. This is because they do not appreciate the principle of cutting the enemy by any means. Their preference is for the extra long sword, and relying on the virtue of its length. They think to defeat the enemy from a distance. In this world, it is said, 1 inch gives the hand advantage. But these are the idle words of one who does not know strategy. It shows the inferior strategy of a weak spirit that men should be dependent on the length of their sword, fighting from a distance without the benefit of strategy. I expect there is a case for the school in question liking extra long swords as part of its doctrine. But if we compare this to real life, it is unreasonable. And I think that makes perfect sense, and it's why Wing Chun has a long weapon and a short weapon. Surely we need not necessarily be defeated if we are using a short sword and have no long sword. It is difficult for these people to cut the enemy when at close quarters because of the length of the long sword. The blade path is large, so the long sword is an encumbrance, and they are at a disadvantage compared to the man armed with a short companion sword. From olden times it has been said, great and small go together. So do not unconditionally dislike extra long swords. So do not unconditionally dislike long swords. What I dislike is the inclination towards the long sword. And he mentioned this in an earlier chapter, saying that you shouldn't have a preference for a weapon. If we consider large-scale strategy, we can think of large forces in terms of long swords, and small forces as short swords. Cannot few give me battle against many? Cannot few me give battle? Cannot few me give battle against many? There are many instances from few men. Oh, that's probably what he meant to say. I think in this version, so they did not alter the language, so that was pure, other than obviously translating. So I think what he meant to say was, cannot few men give battle against many? There are many instances of few men overcoming many. Your strategy is of no account if, when called on to fight in a confined space, your heart is inclined to the longsword, or if you are in a house armed only with your companion sword. Besides, some men have not the strength of others. In my doctrine, I dislike preconceived, narrow spirit. You must study this. You should, or the next section is the strong longsword spirit in other sword schools. I'm going to pause right here.